And welcome to today's webinar on Review 360. We want to focus in on the universal screener for mental health and behavior and well-being of our students. My name is Michael Charon. I'm one of your assessment consultants at Pearson Canada Assessment, and we have Nadira Chand here, my colleague. And we're happy to share some information with you about Review 360, which is it's a web-based platform that, in not just our opinion, but in a number of educators across Canada, this is a really important tool to be able to support our students with a lot of their well-being, their mental health, and their behavior to improve and to support each one of those areas. So our plan for today, or what we would like to share with you, is really a nice overview of what Review 360 is, what it encompasses, but then really focus in on what we consider as one of the most important aspects of Review 360 is the universal screening. So being able to support all of our students and identify students who may be struggling that otherwise we may not have picked up on before. So Review 360, it's really a comprehensive solution to support behavior, to support mental health and well-being of our students. It's a web-based system so that our teachers, our special educators, our principals, our administrators, and even parents can log into to access resources, again, to support the well-being of our students' behavior and mental health. This platform, this web-based solution, includes four main components. The first one that we'll mention now and that we'll elaborate on is the universal screening. So really being able to support all of our students, to keep an eye on them, to make sure that there aren't students that are struggling that we may have missed. There's also a portion that allows us to monitor the progress of behavior plans that we may have put in place for those students who we've identified in the screening as needing support. There's also incident management modules so that if we want to track any potential in-class, out-of-class incidents, we're able to have that data readily available and the tracking mechanism. And really an amazing component to Review 360, one of the modules is around professional development for our teachers, for our special educators and administrators to be able to support student needs in different areas of mental health, well-being, and behavior. This is really a system that employs best practices and that it houses all of the resources, all of the tools needed to support our students' mental health and well-being. And because these are all data-based decisions that we're making, all of the results are being provided to us in an objective, data-based manner. And this allows us to look at outcomes for our individual students who we've identified in the screening, to improve outcomes for classroom experiences and classroom climate, classroom performance, as well as being able to empower our schools and our educators to be able to support our students in their areas of need that in the past we may not have picked up on. So this allows us the opportunity to, again, catch any of the students, keep an eye on all of our students, support all of our students in an equitable way, and then support our staff in the means in which that they can help our students.
Just to underscore that visual and that last point on that slide there, Mike, what I would almost want to do is put the student in right where that Review 360 visual is, and kind of say that with all of these together and with all of these eyes and the PD that can kind of funnel through for our teachers, we've got principals who will be able to have access to the system. We've got access at a district level, but we're really putting all of our efforts in, on, and back to the student, creating kind of that multidisciplinary approach, but also just kind of seeing how many different ways we can support the student, whether it be through universal screening, progress monitoring, incident management, and then, additional support for the teacher.
That's an amazing perspective on that. I think I got distracted by all the trees and didn't see the forest there, but you're absolutely right. And it's a nice way to look at it, that Review 360 really puts that student in the center of everything, so that we are really looking at them from all these different views and supporting them in different ways. And another way that, if I can, I guess, add on to the analogy, is Review 360. I always like looking at it as we're taking into account all around the student, from involving everybody that's around the student themselves, their teachers, their administrators, their parents.
That's right.
So it's giving that all around support for the student. That was great.
Okay. I'm glad you liked it.
I do. And so the one area that we wanted to share more information about is around the universal screening. Right now, I'm just going to take the time to briefly highlight what the screeners are, because these are gold standard, validated, highly reliable tools that have been in the field for many years and are very reputable, standardized assessments. So Review 360 houses 3 of them that you can choose any one of them or all of them if you'd like. There's the Bask 3. Part of the Bask 3 is called the Behavioral and Emotional Screening System. So it's the Bask 3 BESS. So Review 360 incorporates the BESS. It also incorporates the Social Skills Improvement System, Social Emotional Learning, Screening, and Monitoring Scales. There is also another measure that it's kind of split into 2, the SIBs and the SEBs. And what that looks at is student internalizing behavior and student externalizing behavior. So again, these are 3 different standardized assessment tools that provide objective scores, data for you to, again, be confident in the decisions that you're making in the identification process and being able to support all of your students. So that's just the gist of the universal screening. We're going to get into this in more detail with you in just a moment. However, I did want to mention those other modules or components of Review 360, because it is important to have a good conceptual understanding of the platform itself and the solution, the all-encompassing solution to, again, support our students in all ways, all around them. So we looked at the screeners. After the screeners, we have some data, and we are able to then progress monitor. Now, we can progress monitor at the in group levels, but we can also, I think most importantly, is track any interventions or plans that we've put in place for the individual students who, from our screening, have been identified as being at risk for either behavioral, social, emotional, or social skill difficulties. Now, because this is all web-based and all the data is automatically uploaded, these results, these reports are instantaneously available. And depending if you are the teacher or a special education resource staff, an administrator or a parent, you will have views that will be meaningful for you, that won't share information that's beyond what support you are providing. However, it'll provide you with the information that's going to be helpful for you to help the student or your child that you're working with. The system itself uses some, I want to say, well, they're research-based intervention strategy recommendations that you're able to assign to that student that are based on their areas of difficulty, those specific behavioral or mental health difficulties or struggles that they're encountering. You can then put in place these strategies and monitor the effectiveness, the progress of those strategies to help that student in their area of need. Now, when we're looking at the progress monitoring, we have 3 subscriptions available within, say, Review 360. There's one that's meant for special education, general education, and then one that includes all of the above. And this gives you an idea of some of the progress monitoring plans that can be put in place by either our special educators or even our teachers. And these would include behavioral management plans, behavioral tracking plans, incident progress plans. We can even look at, for special education, speech language plans for SLPs, working with students. And at the classroom level, our teachers can look at student support plans and really building in the IEP or the behavioral intervention plan with the appropriate staff members so that everybody is going to have access to that student's data and performance. Everybody's kept on the same page. We're working as a team here.
And I also just want to make a mention at that point about kind of our tiered assessment strategy, if we could, right? Where we have our tier 1 students, our tier 2 students, and then our tier 3 students. So depending on which bucket or which group of students we'd like to kind of specialize in, if we really only want to use Review 360 for tier 1 and tier 3, we have the option of doing that. Or if we want to use it as a benchmark identification system for our tier 1 students, and then elevate those interventions that are needed for those tier 2 students, Review 360 will really, really help with that identification and progress monitoring kind of system or routine that we have down in the schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how our educators are using this as well, that they're using it in that special education place. They're using it in the general education space. And it's really that it's allowing them to, it's empowering them to be making decisions again that are objective. So it's not just based on their subjective feelings of how that student is doing. They can feel confident that they're using objective quantitative means, data to support what they're feeling, and to again use that data to determine if what we've planned and set out for that student is effective. So if we were to take a look at just some of the graphs and the reporting, the functionality within Review 360, there is that incident management subscription or offering that Review 360 offers. And this allows you to look at in-class incidents, say speaking out of turn, bullying, different, again, a list of even customizable in-class incidents that you want to ensure that you're monitoring. Those can be included. There's also incidents that are more related to office referrals. So we're looking at discipline incidents. So it's a way to track, identify what incidents are so that we can look at potential trends, potential areas where we may need to, as a system, augment the capacity of our staff to be able to deal with those particular behavioral mental health issues. So again, having this data allows us to keep an eye on specific students and also take a look at trends that may be occurring at a more system level. As you can see, even with some of these graphs, everything is color-coded, really easy to interpret. We can be looking at incidents by time of day, by different classroom, program, by each one of our individual students. So again, it's going to be able to allow us to have a really clear picture of how our individual students are doing that may be struggling, as well as how our students in general are faring in a number of different areas. So with that incident management, our goal is to really reduce the amount of those disruptive behaviors or those, let's say, those incidents. And with that, in that progress monitoring and so on, that we're able to really craft a plan for that student and analyze that data to, again, determine if we are helping that student in their area of need. And if not, what we're able to do is put in place those interventions and those strategies that are recommended within Review 360 and monitor the progress, the effectiveness of those intervention strategies, again, for that particular student or for perhaps a group of students that we may be working on to deliver a common plan, let's say social skills strategies, that we can then track the overall group improvement. And again, coming back to my analogy of the Review 360, and that it kind of allows everybody around that student to be involved, to communicate and share in what's working and in what's needed to support that student. So again, it brings in the parent, the teacher, the special educator, the principal if needed, so that everybody is supporting that student. So it really facilitates that communication.
And Mike, just to kind of underscore what you're saying a little bit, this, including the students, the parents, the teachers, the staff, even our extended community members, what we're doing is we're creating a positive school environment so that everyone will feel safe, they feel welcome, they feel respected, and everyone essentially has a role to play in promoting these healthy relationships in a school climate, which will help to encourage and promote appropriate school behavior and student behavior. In our conversations across the country, I'm sure you've heard, but there are really 4 major buckets that every Canadian school often wants to drive, and it's promoting positive student behavior, providing early and ongoing intervention, preventing inappropriate behavior, and addressing appropriate behavior with appropriate consequences. So what all of this incident management and what Review 360 helps to facilitate is covering all, providing the data that will help to cover all 4 of those buckets. Whether we're on the East Coast or on the West Coast, that is something that is universal that all Canadian schools hope to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. And, along with that is really every student across Canada. Don't you think that it would be of their benefit and, having that network around them, that circle of care around them, that in and of itself is something that really all of our children, all of our students really should expect, and that's what really the least that they deserve is to be supported by everybody. And this, again, this is going to be a way that it helps us support that student. It helps with facilitating the communication again. And I'm talking about around the student. The students right in that middle too, so they're part of that conversation. And again, being able to share with them that circle of care, that network around them is it's essential. And again, it's, to me, every student deserves that. So to be able to support our teachers, our educators, so that
they deserve support too. We've got support for the teachers.
Absolutely, exactly. And this is going to be a way that they can equip themselves to be able to support their students in these areas. We know that, going through teachers college, they aren't covering all of these in great detail. There's a lot of focus on the academics, but really, we know that there is a need, and the school boards, educational institutions have shared with us that there is a need for supporting our educators, our teachers, our special education resource staff, even our administrators, to be able to support these topics of mental health and behavior. And what these professional development courses they are developed by professionals out there, by school psychologists. This whole program was envisioned and developed by a school psychologist. And so what we've done is really put together all of the best practice, validated strategies that have been put in place for these different populations. So if we're looking at populations of students, perhaps with ASD, behavioral issues, intellectual disabilities, they will all have strategies that would be more appropriate or more effective for their particular needs. So what we have are these professional development modules that will, again, augment the capacity of our teachers to be able to support these students in these different ways. And they are all online modules, self-paced. There are some learning checkpoints, videos, examples. So it's really engaging these professional development courses. And again, they're designed so that you're able to then feel confident in applying some of the strategies that are available in Review 360, and then progress monitoring the implementation of those strategies, again, to see our students improving in those areas where they're struggling. And now we are very excited to really get into the universal screening. This to us, and from what we've heard really across the country in Canada, is that there really is a need to have a universal screening solution for behavior, for mental health, for well-being, but something that's efficient, time efficient, that's cost efficient, and that's reliable. And really, Review 360 and the screeners, they meet all of those points. So just to, I guess as a reminder of those universal screeners that are part of Review 360, we have the BEST, which is the Bask 3 Behavioral Emotional Screening System, the SSIS, Social Skills Improvement System, Social Emotional Learning. There's a screening scales for that. And then we have the SIBS and the SEBS, so for internalizing and externalizing behavior screener.
Sure, Mike, if I could just kind of talk a little bit about, sorry, what these are, like what's the point really? So I'm sure we all know that, you know, there are students in our classrooms that experience psychological or emotional issues, and that we have pretty staggering statistics in Canada where we have 1 in 5 students with a mental health issue. And some may find these figures shocking, or really for those within the trenches, educators and students alike, we know this presents a very real problem. Students are struggling in school. Teachers are unable to help them by no fault of their own. But this situation will kind of create a very vicious cycle of behavior incidents and inconsistent consequences and frustration for all, leading to kind of that very overwhelming hopelessness feeling. And the sheer number of behaviors that occur in the classroom on a daily basis make it very difficult to formulate an accurate measure of the real challenges and the real needs. We know it can be a challenge to figure out where to start, and really there can be so many variations in the types of behaviors that we're seeing in the students. So what Review 360 does, and what the nice thing about these universal screeners includes, is that it goes beyond our typical behavior management program. And what we're trying to provide is a screening tool for the social and emotional skills and the common mental health concerns that are often at the root of these behaviors themselves. So, you know, you layer in the incident reporting and the data management and consistent interventions with progress monitoring, customizable reporting, and tailored on-demand professional development, all within our fingertips. in the platform. But as you were kind of already saying, the nice thing about our universal screening and including this kind of as our benchmarking level is that it will kind of take into consideration those internalizing symptoms like depression or anxiety, or even the externalizing symptoms like fighting and cursing in the classroom. So again, just kind of underscoring that full picture and why it's important to include universal screening in the classroom process.
Yeah, no, really great points. And one of them that always resonates to me is, catching some of those kids that may have otherwise slipped through the cracks, some of those internalizing, or kids that are struggling with internalizing issues. They're not the ones that are causing, let's say, troubles or disruptions in the class.
Yeah,
so they're not necessarily identified by teachers. And this provides us, again, with an objective means of identifying those students who may be struggling. One thing that I think that we'll be mentioning probably in this next slide is that many of these screeners, they will have a student form. So let's say for the Bask, there will be a student form so that we're able to hear from the student. And that's where we tend to catch some of the students, or most of the students, that have those internalizing struggles, depression, anxiety, somatization. So really, we are looking at obtaining ratings from teachers, from parents, so that we have that 360 view of that student. But really, again, what's, to me most important is really that student's perspective on themselves and how they're doing, how they feel. So the screeners that we're using, again, as I mentioned before, these are gold standard, standardized assessments that are used by psychologists, by special educators, speech language pathologists, depending on their area of assessment and intervention. A few really great points about these screeners is that they're short. Some of them, like your CIV-SEBs, are only about 7 questions. The most is about 30 questions, let's say for a parent or teacher. However, with that amount of questions, you actually get quite a bit of information that comes out of it, and I'll share that with you in just a moment. What's great in these days is that it could all be done virtually or completed online. So these forms, these rating scales, are all digital. You can send them out to the parent or teacher or student, or if you do prefer paper, you can print them off. However, being web-based, and again, the advantages of the virtual world these days, it helps with time efficiency and cost efficiency, and you're not
plus
having
the automatic scoring that is built into the platform too, right? So
absolutely, yeah,
that's another advantage.
Absolutely. So it just automatizes everything for you so that after it's completed, results are instantly available. So I mentioned just briefly with the Bask that you'll be able to obtain a number of different scores. So it allows you to further investigate where that student may be struggling. And with some of them, particularly again the Bask, there are what we call validity indexes or indices, and that allows us to have some insight or to help us determine whether or not the responses by the rater were answered in a consistent and reliable, valid way.
If I could just jump in as maybe kind of painting a picture of what this would look like from the teacher point of view. So I'd log into the platform and I'd create a universal screener. As Mike mentioned, there are a few different forms available. We can see this at the teacher, the student, the parent level, though the process will be the same for all the forms. At the teacher level, you would typically only have access to the students in your school, but those settings could be augmented upon, the setting up of your account. The universal screener will be conducted on students you have known for at least 4 weeks. So this is really going to be your benchmarking period, maybe sometime around October, November. And as Michael had stated, the Bask is typically an assessment that we have in our EdPsych or SLP portfolio. What we're kind of giving power to right now is teacher observation and you know, it's a scale. It's going to be very quick and easy to answer. 0 meaning never, 3 meaning always. You know, does the student continuously disrupt the class? Those kind of questions. Very quick, you know, 3 to 4 minutes to complete. But what we're doing, again, to complete that full picture is once the teacher has completed that universal screener, the principal, when he logs in, when he or she logs in, will receive an alert that a teacher has completed the screener. Now, as a principal, I want to analyze the data generated from this report. And I now have the ability to aggregate reports or run individual reports, or even if I'm seeing that there are 3 or 4 classrooms now experiencing the same behavioral disruption, I personally, as a principal, would assign a professional development course that kind of speaks to this, to kind of say, hey guys, I see that you are all running into challenges in this area. Have, you know, let's watch this PD course together, or a module, and complete it. It'll provide some additional tips for what we can implement in the classroom. Thanks, Mike.
That's great. So just to provide a little bit more information about those screeners that are part of Review 360. So the Bask 3 behavioral and emotional screening system, it ranges about 25 to 30 items depending on the form. So there's a teacher form, there's a student form, and a parent form. Now, depending on the rater, the teacher, the student, or the parent, we also have them designed so that there's a preschool form versus a school age or a child adolescent. And same thing with, let's say, the teacher forms, that we have some for preschool students, and then those for our just our typical grade students after preschool. Doesn't require any training from the raters. So the teachers, the parents, the student, again, they're going to answer 25 to 30 questions, sometimes, often, always, never. And from that, as soon as it's completed, let's say the teacher, the administrator, whoever has the privilege to see the results, will then be able to look at an overall score, which would be just a total score of it, let's say overall distress, behavioral, emotional distress. But then it breaks it down into internalizing, externalizing, and adaptive behavior, so that you're able to then have a better idea of where the student is struggling. Is it, again, the externalizing behaviors, or is it those internalizing behaviors that typically we miss as observers?
Right. And things will still also be color coordinated at this point in the system, right? So green typically means everything's good, but if there's a red icon by your internalizing kind of checkbox, that's really letting me know as a teacher that there are some internalizing symptoms that the student is experiencing, and it's red. So it's pretty severe.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that color coding is very helpful, because then it just draws your attention to those students who really we need to support. And as mentioned earlier, there's also a score that's generated that's called the Validity Index, and it allows you to consider how the rater answered the questions in that screener. So were they being really negative, or just inconsistent in the way that they were responding? So it'll be identified that you know, it's interpretable, or that you should use caution in interpreting, because again, there may be inconsistencies or an overly negative I guess scoring of the items. The next screener that's integrated, and actually the program itself is integrated into Review 360, it's called the Social Skills, Social Emotional Learning Edition. As far as social emotional learning, this program is I think, one of the top rated programs for social emotional learning. There's an association called the Consortium for Academic Social Emotional Learning, and this is the kind of think tank out of the US, and these are the areas that they list as the most important social emotional competencies. And this is exactly what the SSIS looks at in these specific categories. As with the Bask 3, Best, that was the 3rd edition. So you can imagine it's been around for a while. It has a pretty good following out in the field by our clinicians. And it's the same with the SSIS. This is actually the 3rd edition of this program. It was developed by Frank Gresham and Stephen Elliott, the top 2 researchers in this area. Sort of digress a bit, but
no, it's helpful information because this is a conversation that's had everywhere in Canada right now. Like this is something that has been layered into our school culture for a number of years. This is just so complementary to things that we've kind of already ironed out in the school system, but really how are we, what kind of metrics are keeping us accountable? So what are we seeing that's keeping us self-aware and self-management? What are we teaching our students? What kind of interventions can we prescribe that way? So it's very complementary.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. Again, another great point that you mentioned is that we put it in our educational settings, we put in place strategies to address all of these areas. But what type of metrics do we have to help us determine if they were effective? And really, that's what these measures do. They allow us to see, are these areas that are of need for our students, or again, perhaps that we put in place some initiatives around these areas, and then this will allow us that objective means to determine whether or not those were effective, or if we need additional work in those areas.
That's right. And even for our good students, responsible decision making, that'll start to highlight some early leadership skills that we can kind of tailor in and say, there's a student leadership council team. Why don't we kind of recommend or volunteer this way? So it works again for all of those students in tier 1. It's just kind of a nice insight to where that student is, or what kind of thing that student might be shy, but hey, they have great leadership skills that we just didn't know about.
Exactly. Yeah. So with this, the screener portion of it is the teacher rating scale. So the teacher fills it out for each one of their students and essentially rates each one of the students on these 5 areas. And it'll be color coded as well for identifying, as let's say the reporting that comes out where the particular students may need assistance. So there is the screening aspect of the SSIS in Review 360. However, there's also a program for teaching social emotional learning skills in all of these areas. So there are modules and lessons to share with the students, to put in place with the students. And it's all part of the same system that's developed by those same world-renowned authors. So really a complete system for social emotional learning, from the screening to the supporting the student to progress monitoring afterwards. So I think I stole most of my thunder in that last slide with talking about it, but really the teacher can score or provide ratings for each of their students in the class. It takes maybe for a whole classroom 30 minutes max. After the first few times that you've gone through it, it may take a few minutes, but then after you're familiar with the ratings, you're going to know it's going to be easy for you as a teacher to rate the student in each one of those 5 areas. And you'll have that classroom done in no time. And then again, it will highlight which students are struggling, which ones do we need to help in those particular areas. And what's also nice is that we can see group trends. If we see all of our students struggling in one of these areas, then we leverage one of the lesson plans from the social emotional learning edition, implement that, and then redo the ratings. So the screener is actually a means of doing progress monitoring as well. It's the same form that's used for progress monitoring, so that again, you're able to see if whether or not those lesson plans have helped out our students as a group and even at the individual level. The next option, or the last option, so we have the Bask 3, BEST, and it looks at internalizing, externalizing, and adaptive behavior. We have the Social Skills Improvement System, SEL, so it looks at our 5 competency areas in social emotional learning. And then we have the SIB-SEBS. And this is essentially 2 separate ratings that a teacher would complete. And one of them really just looks at internalizing behaviors. And the other looks at externalizing behaviors. About 7 questions long that the teacher would rate. And then it will help you identify whether or not a student may have elevations, or if they're struggling with externalizing behavior. So the results would be identified with the SEBS versus if they're struggling with internalizing behaviors, which would be the SIBs. So very similar in a sense to what you would see with the Bask 3. However, with the Bask 3, you're able to get the perspective, the ratings from the teacher, the parent, and the child, whereas the SIB-SEBS is only from the teacher.
I will also say that the item selection will be a little bit more specific. So for the internalizing, we're really going to be pulling out, feelings of nervousness or fear, withdrawn, seems unhappy, complains about being sick or hurt, like very specific feeling-based questions. And then for the externalized items, we've got, fights or argues with peers, bullies others, gets angry easily, lies to get out of trouble. So your selection of items will be different, but they are very specific. And so I think you are seeing different areas that can kind of be, come up with your student.
Absolutely. So we talked about Review 360, just having a good conceptual overview of how we can support our students in different ways. The screeners that are used, and that this is all online so that all the reporting is automatized. However, the reporting capacities within Review 360 are amazing. One, because it's web-based, you'll have a dashboard so that you can see all the results that are meaningful to you. If you're a teacher, you're going to see your classroom. If you're a special educator, you're going to see perhaps the groups that you may be working with, but the individual caseload that you're working with, those students. If you're a principal, you're going to see what's important to you. If you're a superintendent, you're going to see a higher overview level. But because it's web-based, again, everything is automatic. As soon as the forms are completed, the data is accessible. And again, dependent on your role, you will be able to look into information that's going to be helpful for you to help the students. So if it's, let's say, the screeners, we're able to just take a look at our students and see if they're at normal or no risk, if they're at an elevated risk, or really at an extreme or elevated risk that we need to follow up with them immediately to provide immediate support. So that's at the student level. We can identify that again right away. But then also we're able to aggregate the data. So we can look at trends. We can look at grade trends, school trends, gender, ethnicity, special groups, classrooms. It's really who you are, what your role is in supporting the students will determine what information, what reports you would have access to, so that it will help you make more informed decisions on who to help and how to help them.
I'll also add that we now also, with the integration of Review 360 in the school culture, we're no longer basing our decisions off of hunches or anything like that. We have actual we have data, and we have reports that will support our decisions. So again, as a principal, if I would like to take broader actions or see that there needs to be a behavior that needs to be addressed at a school level, I have the reports and I have the data to back that up, which I think is just more helpful.
Absolutely. So a few other of the just types of reports that are available. Again, you can have reports by user. So for wanting to take a look at an individual student and showing how they fared on the assessments, or if we want to take a look at at who, let's say the students, by school or by grade or by teacher. So again, it really, the data, the information can be viewed in many different ways, depending on what your role is, and the information should be meaningful to you.
Right. So even at an administrator level, let's say in a school board or in a school district, I could then start to compare schools. And the nice thing about Review 360 is the more student information, the more data, the more it's used, the more information we have to base our results or our actions or interventions off of. I noticed school A is doing this really well and school B is kind of struggling with this. Maybe I can create some sort of synergy there. But at a district level, I'd really be able to interpret those results, differently based on the information provided to me at the school.
Yeah, exactly. And those reports, you can export them if you want to, but most of the reporting, it's all configurable in the platform itself. With the screener, as I mentioned before, with the Bask, there's the validity index. So it'll essentially indicate if it's invalid, if you should not bother looking into it or interpreting it. And also, what you're able to do is look at trends and progress monitoring related to the particular screeners. So you're able to use that screener over time, take say 4 points in time, to be able to map out and graph out how that student is progressing based on the interventions and the plans that we've put in place for that student. And as always, especially with Review 360, it is very helpful to see a demo of the platform.
How to get in the platform to really showcase everything that we've been talking about. I mean, with a demo, we'd actually kind of be able to take you through the items, and we can kind of start to take a closer look at which screener, or unless you want all of them, would kind of match your vision of what you'd like to include in your school. But yeah, as Mike's saying, we would really appreciate the opportunity of taking you through a demo.
Yeah, and that's really when you see how easy it is to use, and again, the user friendliness, how the platform is just very well organized. It really helps one have a good understanding of the content in there and how helpful it'll be for our Canadian students or educators. And any one of us are happy to set up a demo, a virtual demo with you. As we're logging in online today, we can easily schedule a demo with you where we'll be able to go through the whole platform with you. And as Nadira mentioned, show you some of those screener items that we're not able to really show on screen today. So to really get in depth on all the details and again, show you what it looks like, show you how it can really, it'll help improve your means of supporting each student and all of your students. And really that's, I know that as educators, as people in this field of work, that's what we're doing. That's why we're here, is to be able to help people, help our kids, help our children, our students. So this is a way that we know that we can help you help those kids out there. So I look forward to hearing from you, and I'm sure any and all of my colleagues do as well. You could visit us at pearsonclinical.ca/assessment consultants. That's how you'll find us, and yeah, you'll see our pictures. But we also have an email address and a phone number so that you can reach out to us. And our website is pearsonclinical.ca. So you can learn more about Review 360, about our other platforms, AimsWeb Plus, Canadian.
Bask.
Yeah, and if ever you would want to contact our customer care department, their phone number is up here. However, to reach one of the consultants, visit us on that web link, and then we'll have our own phone number and email address so you can reach out to us. But on behalf of Nadira, myself, Pierre, Sam, Jeremy, thank you for your time today. Thank you for the work that you do, most importantly, helping out our kids, our Canadian kids, our students. you know, there are future or fellow Canadians, and there's some of our own kids.
Yeah.
So we appreciate everything that you do, and we're happy to help out with Review 360 and any of our other assessments, interventions, or platforms, again, to help you help out the people that you work with. So thank you again.
Yes, and thank you for your time today. We look forward to hearing from you.
Take care, everybody.